fact, by the end of the war, it is estimated that 5 Russian tanks were destroyed for every German tank. But it was never enough to affect the huge numerical superiority enjoyed by the Allies. Even on the Western Front, 4 Allied tanks were being destroyed for every German machine lost. For the Western Allies, the solution was very much the same as the Russians. It was to abandon the search for radical advances, take a simple, workable design, and manufacture it in vast quantities. While the Russians had the T-34, the Allied option was the Sherman. This was the main battle tank of the Western Allies. It had numerous flaws, chief among them its very high profile, which made an easy target, but it was available in huge numbers. So many Shermans were manufactured that they were even shipped to the east to help the Russian war effort. The Russian response was politely muted, as the Sherman never matched the standards of the T-34. Even when it was upgraded to include a high-velocity 85mm weapon, the tank was really no match for the Tiger. As further proof of the Sherman's weakness, it is interesting to note that only a small proportion of German tanks were actually destroyed by the Sherman. The vast majority either fell victim to Allied fighter bombers or had to be abandoned and destroyed by their crews when they experienced mechanical difficulties or, more frequently, ran out of fuel. From 1944, the Allied bombing campaigns were really beginning to bite, and the shortage of fuel and spare parts was killing the panzer formations as effectively as the Allied armies. One thing the panzer divisions did have on their side was experience, and before they were swept away, the small groups of Tigers performed heroically. One man will always be associated with the Tiger. He was Michael Wittmann of the 1st SS Panzer Division. Wittmann was responsible for a huge number of Allied tank kills. By June 1944, Wittmann and his Tiger had been responsible for more than 130 Russian tanks when he was transferred to the Western Front. Despite the skills of men like these, the Tigers were still being destroyed as fast as they were being delivered, and Wittmann himself fell in action in August 1944, his machine totally destroyed. Such losses were simply unsustainable. In 1944, despite the pressures of the Allied bombing raids, some 20,000 German armored fighting vehicles were manufactured. But battlefield losses were running at some 23,000 machines, so the number of German tanks available in 1944 at the front line actually fell. During 1944, on average, there were never more than 70 Tigers available for action at any given time on the whole of the Russian front. The remaining machines were either under short or long-term repair. It was this tiny force which forged a legend. On the Western Front, the Allies by now enjoyed total air supremacy, and the Allied Air Force was able to rove at will, destroying German aircraft on the ground. The high rate of attrition on their armored force caused the Germans to cast around desperately for a solution. One successful expedient was to dispose with the turret of the new Panther tanks to produce turretless vehicles with less flexibility, but with heavier firepower. They were also easier and quicker to manufacture. 3 could be made for every 2 tanks. These tank killers were known by the German name, Jagdpanther. By this stage of the war, German armor was fighting almost exclusively defensive battles, for which the Jagdpanthers were perfectly suited. They could lie in wait, firing from fixed positions. The Jagdpanther shown here is from the Imperial War Museum. It has had the side removed to permit the public to view the inside, but the sense of military efficiency still remains. It too bears the scars of the armor-piercing shells which disabled it in 1945. As with the turretless tanks, there was also a steady increase in size and armament in the tank hunters, which evolved from the simple Marder I, based on the Panzer I, to the ultimate tank-killing machine, the Jagd Tiger, based on the upgraded Tiger II. Massive armor and a superb high-caliber gun made these machines deadly. But once again, the design and engineering effort took valuable resources away from producing simpler designs in the volume the Germans needed. The last Panzer to see active service was the Moving Fortress, which was the upgraded Tiger B, or King Tiger. It carried the huge 88mm high-velocity gun. But only 470 of these machines were ever manufactured, never enough to seriously affect the tidal wave of armor now encroaching Germany on every side. But the Tiger and Tiger B still made a large impact in the closing months of the war.
Now, the Tiger II is a remarkable tank by any standards. A bigger and more powerful gun than the Tiger I, and the armour is thicker and sloped, giving it a tremendous advantage. And when you think this tank came into service in 1944, it really looks almost good enough to use today. It's a considerable tribute to the German designers. The trouble is, it's getting near the limit of weight that the engine and transmission can stand, and of course producing a tank like this under wartime conditions is a tremendous strain, especially when the industry is being heavily bombed. Therefore, although you could say that in terms of gunpowder and armour, it way outclasses tanks such as the T-34, it was never available in enough numbers, and it certainly wasn't easy to ship around the country in a hurry to get to trouble spots, and in that sense has to be regarded as a failure in terms of tank design.
The Tiger B was the largest practical tank to see action in the Panzer divisions. Already its huge size was giving enormous difficulty in negotiating narrow roads and moving across bridges, few of which could carry its huge weight. It also needed huge stocks of the vital fuel supplies, which Germany could no longer provide. But in 1945, when the war ended, Germany was developing the super-heavy Panzer VII, a huge metal monster, massively armored and sporting a huge main gun. In an untypically humorous moment, this machine, designed to lead the Nazi war machine, was given the jokey nickname, the Mouse. The Mouse was never to see action, and only 4 prototypes were built. But it seemed that the crazed minds of the Third Reich would never give up the quest to be the best and the biggest, whatever the cost. But as the humble T-34 had proved, in evolution, sometimes quantity matters as much as quality.